Hi, my name is Diogo Pedroso. Today I'm going to give some intuition regarding Black-Scholes equation, discuss some assumptions and mainly discuss why this equation is so important in the quantitative finance environment. So the first question is, why Black-Scholes equation? What is so important about this equation? What you have is that you are developing a model that allows you to price some instruments in such a way that you don't have any arbitrage opportunities using this price and using the hedge that is obtained with this model. So how exactly can we get this intuitive picture about the Black-Scholes equation? Let's remember that when we are deriving the equation by using replication method, what we have in one side is the price of the instrument, the position on the instrument, and the position in the underlying asset, which is considered the only source of uncertainty in this environment. It's interesting to notice that if one decides to add another source of uncertainty, one could simply add a third component in this side of the equation. For example, the most common thing that one wants to include is some stochastic volatility, for example. So let's say that this portfolio with the instrument and the underlying asset is evolving on time in exactly the same way that an investment in the money market account, which is considered to be risk-free. So the intuition on the money market account behind it is that you have an investment that is completely free of volatility risk and credit risk. In the past, LIBOR was considered to be a good proxy for risk-free interest rate. But this position has been questioned by practitioners that realized that during the crisis in 2008 there was some credit risk embedded in this interest rate. If you want to know more about it, it's not difficult to find different articles that are discussing the possibility of the use of different rates as a proxy for risk-free interest rate. For example, the use of some overnight interest rate or even some repo rates. Well, beyond the replication method that were first proposed in the original paper of Black-Scholes, there are some other interesting ways to do it. For example, using the martingale property. What you are doing by using this property is putting on the same fit the effects of the probabilities of decrease and increase in the value of the underlying asset on the final value of the instrument at the exercise date. In the original paper, there were 7 explicit assumptions that were described there. Let's discuss each one. The first is that the interest rate, the short-term interest rate, is constant, which is quite important. The second, the asset price follows a geometric Brownian motion. What is so important behind this geometric Brownian motion is that what you're considering is that there are no possibilities of negative values for this variable. There are no dividends being distributed in this environment for this specific asset. The fourth, the instrument considered is a vanilla European option. What is said is that what you are pricing is an instrument with an European exercise. What is so important behind it is that you have only one exercise date in this instrument. Fifth, there are no transaction costs or fees applied to this market. So what is said is that this market is a frictionless market. The assumption number 6 is that this market admits the use of short position for use deleveraging. So what you're considering in the second term of the replication method in deriving the Black-Scholes equation is that you have some position in the underlying asset. And in this market specifically, it is allowed to assume short positions in this underlying asset. What exactly is this short positions, just to be clear for those that don't know about it, is the possibility that you are speculating about the decrease of price of some asset. What you're doing exactly is to borrowing this asset from someone and then return this asset with a lower price and profit because of this spread. Assumption number 7 says that it is possible to borrow or lend any amount of money in the money market account. Some of these assumptions are not realistic, of course, but they are based on some empirical assumptions regarding the market, and of course they could fit less or more depending on how the market is going in that moment. So, for example, let's talk about the assumption of the geometrical Brownian motion. Of course, when you are doing this, we are assuming that the asset price has a log normal distribution. Of course, this is not exactly true, but it's sufficient true to capture most of the motions that you have in that market. Going further on the discussion of the dynamics of the asset price, it's important to say that the assumption of the geometrical Brownian motion is as good as many other possibilities. This is because there is no way to derive a dynamic from first principles. So what you could do is to make an assumption, establish some parameters, and calibrate these parameters against the market. Beyond the 7 explicit assumptions, there are still 4 other implicit assumptions that somehow are some consequences of the 7 assumptions mentioned before. The first one is that trades can be done continuously. So, of course, this is not exactly, unless this assumption is as good as how liquid is the instruments that you are pricing in that moment. The second assumption is that you could hedge continuously on time. So no matter the position that you have, you can change it continuously on time. I'm talking about the position in the underlying asset. This is important. The third implicit assumption is that there are no bid-ask spreads considered for none of the variables that are included in this model. What is implicit behind this assumption is that what we are considering, we are talking about liquid instruments. So this instrument is traded so frequently that the bid-ask is so small compared to the movements that you have in this market. There were some variations that were published afterwards, including bid-ask or including some uncertainty in the determination of the volatility, for example, but the model that are really well established among the practitioners are the classical Black-Scholes equation. There is still some fourth that I would like to discuss. This one says that the asset that you use to make this hedging is the underlying asset. Of course, you could hedge the position that you have in the instruments that you want to price with another instrument or some other asset that has some correlation with the instrument that is the underlying asset of the instruments that you want to price. But in terms of the equation that we are developing, that we are deriving, what is considered for the hedge is the underlying asset. So that's it. On this video we discussed some intuitions behind Black-Scholes model. If you want to know more, I invite you to visit my blog quantchronicles.blogspot.com. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave your comment, share. Bye. Thanks.